Okay, for people joining this live stream, we are talking about incremental improvements to Wolfram Language, and we've got a number of topics today. Let's start off with association transpose.
Yeah, so this question has appeared a number of times, but probably the fact that it keeps appearing means that
tells us the answer. I think that very fact. I mean, I needed to use this. Other people have needed to use this. The reason we don't want transpose to just do this is what?
Well, the fact that it might break things because it has worked this way for so long.
But it's not done anything with associations, right?
Right, but it's a bit because associations are not true arrays.
Yeah, I think we shouldn't. I think we should have a separate association transpose exactly for the reason that we can do things like introduce missing objects and so on. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Useful.
We have several examples where we specialize association functions. We should do the same here.
I think so. And I think we need association transpose. It's must have come up at least a dozen times.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then what is needed here? We need to, in this case where there are unfull associations, right? What is the, I mean, don't we already have this in some of the join across type functionality? This question of how we add things in there. I mean, this seems to me to be a less obscure version of things like you know, some of these join across type things, yes?
Yes, or association thread.
What does association thread do again?
Well, it's like taking two lists and creating the association.
Oh, yeah, right. So association thread is closely related to, I see. So association thread, right.
In a sense, it's transposing rule and list there.
Right. Right, okay. Yeah, this association transpose is a function we need. We should just have it. Are there any other issues about it? There's a question of if you add, what is it doing? Is it doing a key union of all of these, of the keys in all of these different associations? What order does it use? If this is ABC and this one is BA, what does it do?
I would follow the order in the first.
So what it does is it's doing a, if we've got a sequence of things and thing number 7 or something they're all ABC subsets, but then there's a D later on. It is the first. It is the. What is the rule then? Does it scan? I mean, I think the rule could be that it basically is scanning lexically. So it goes through all the things in the first item, then it goes through the things in the second item, skipping the ones it's already seen.
Exactly.
It's like it's a delete duplicates of the join of all of those key sequences. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so in particular, that also includes the previous case in which we have the same keys but in a different order. So we just return things as the first association.
Sorry, the same keys in a different order.
Yes, the previous question. So transpose right now requires that the same keys are given in the same order.
I see, with an allowed heads thing. Yeah, we should ignore that.
Yeah.
We shouldn't care. It should just use, but now there probably should be a mechanism to specify the keys that you want to get out. So in other words, association transpose could have a second argument, which is the target keys. See what I'm saying? All of those things. And then could be a list of keys you want to get out in the order you want to get them out, so that it drops anything that is not consistent with those keys.
But then this is more like a lookup function. I mean, why do we want to combine these two operations in the same one?
I guess we don't. I guess it can be something where we can say key take or key drop around this. Now, what does this do if it isn't just a list of associations, if it's something more complicated, like an association of lists?
I think it should work with any combinations of associations and lists, probably also including lists of lists.
Yeah, fair enough. But so then what is it doing? So it's got the same level specifications as transpose, is that correct?
That I don't know, because if we want to transpose deeper levels and the thing is rugged, maybe it may get complicated.
Well, let's think about it, whether it's possible. I mean, I think it's always possible by filling in with missings, because that deragifies it.
So what happens if we have two associations with completely different keys?
In the association transpose.
Yeah.
Well, then it's got a lot of missings in it. Well, hold on. What actually happens? So the transpose will be a single association. Wait a minute. What is the transpose here? So why isn't it just a bunch of missings? And why doesn't it make lists that are always pairs, but they have a bunch of missings in them?
Yeah. Yes, I was thinking that when we have a deeper rugged case, it may be frequent that the associations inside are very different. But yes, we just add missings there.
Well, the only thing we could do other than missings, and this is kind of a join across option, right, if I'm not mistaken, is to just leave it out of the list. Do you see what I'm saying?
Not really.
Well, I mean, so we could have a list that was 1, 2 missing, 3, 4 missing, right?
Yeah.
But one thing we can do is to treat the missing like a nothing and have that drop. You see what I'm saying? So the list does not maintain its index position correctly, but the list simply maintains the bucket of what's in it correctly. See what I'm saying?
That's something that we do at the end. So we temporarily add the missings and then we remove them at the end.
Well, I don't know how we do it, implementationally. Lies on our live stream is asking, aren't associations supposed to be orderless? The answer is they are orderless for some purposes, but not for others. As a courtesy, they maintain their order for purposes of display. But they are orderless for purposes of pattern matching and so on. But as a courtesy, they simply maintain the order for displays. Is that a fair characterization for people who know the internals?
I believe you can also index them by position.
Okay, yes, right. They maintain these things, but they are not meaningful for most operations.
I would say that in order to make the standard list operations work on associations, they behave as if they had order.
Yeah, right. Okay, but anyway, but with respect to this, okay, so tentatively, association transpose would have a second argument, which is level specification, just like transpose. When the thing is too ragged, it will fill in with missings as appropriate. And we might later on figure out a bunch of choices for how those missings get pruned.
Right.
Okay, let me make a comment. Okay, so are we good with association transpose moving forward?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, why does this not work? Why don't we prune the nothings?
I think this is related to the fact that we want association to be all complete, and I
Well,
don't really.
yeah, but I mean, doesn't association have evaluation anyway?
It does the first time, yeah. So when it was constructed, it could remove them. Perhaps what we could do here is to distinguish rule from rule delayed, and not remove it when it's rule delayed.
Exactly. That's exactly what I would do. Yeah, that's exactly what I would do. Let's explore that possibility, okay? See whether that is implementable.
Yeah, perhaps we should discuss this in LCC with potentially with Mark, who is.
Okay, why don't you ping him and see what he says about it first?
Yeah. Okay, I'll do.
Okay, great. On to the next item. Oh my gosh, this is a head exploding topic.
Well, we need to continue. So those are the options that we discussed previously. So this was the motivation we gave in the previous meeting for why it would have this function.
I'm now trying to remember what the point of this is.
So the main thing was that because we want to convert these query expressions into a normal form that includes apply through. Apply through is HeadMap. So we want to find the best name for it.
Right.
It will be nice to be used.
Okay, so HeadMap again is
applying a list of functions to a single argument.
okay, so these are discussing the curried forms there.
Yep.
Is it apply? It's not apply, is it?
It's not apply in our sense of apply. Yeah. So if we can avoid apply, it will be better.
But it's what it is it's construct. So right now, if I say FG X, that's really wild. What is that doing? If I do that, I get that, which is what we would expect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and now we need a through in order to get the result.
I mean, it's really obscure. You know, there's things like construct across. It's really quite obscure.
Construct through is too weird because it will be the right combination of our current functions.
It's really obscure. I mean, you have to explain that joke, you have to give the whole history of the world, so to speak. I mean, it's just, it's very obscure. All right, what is the easy way to explain what this is going to do? This is taking a list of functions, list apply, listed. None of these themes seem like what about something like function list, FG? List function.
What about list construct? I'm thinking of what we did with take list from take.
You know, this is really a bad sign. I'm starting to forget how these things work. Yeah, okay, fine. That's a successive taker. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
I think construct is an obscure. I mean, construct is an unusual function anyway. I don't think we should compound it here.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, the meaning of function here is wrong because function of f of x will give us f.
Yeah, I think function is too general to be applied here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lies on our live stream is asking, what is this supposed to be? How will it work with pattern matching? I don't think it has a real story with pattern matching because I think this is a thing that the object itself, I mean, the object itself is analogous to something like one of these function composition thingies, right? Where I could then say of x. Why doesn't that work? What do I have to do here to make that work? Like that, right? It's one of these things that is it's in that family. It's something that automatically takes a list of functions and gives a list of results from that list of functions. Did we write documentation page for it?
No, I don't think we did.
So let's say with whatever this thing is called, HeadMap or whatever, of FG, well, F1, F2, gives whatever it gives. So that's easy to explain by example. Yeah, it's so easy to explain this function by example, but we just need it to have a name. I mean, honestly, with all these names, HeadMap is the difficulty with HeadMap is it's not a map, right? Well, except it is a map.
Yes, I mean, if we see the code written there for this function, it's just a map.
No, I understand that, but it's a map into the head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's some sort of dual operation of mapping.
I'm beginning to think that HeadMap is the least bad. Yeah, I mean, and Genesis on a live stream is suggesting list apply. The problem is it's not an apply. It's really a construct, but in a sense it's a map because it's a map against that. I think HeadMap is the least bad that we've come up with.
Okay. So we can start with it and see.
Yeah, I think that's what we should do.
In the examples. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
WordList. Oops.
So, Nick, can you explain this one?
Yeah, so this is something Sean suggested, but we've gone over a couple of different times, and that's looking at functions like WordList and the way they interact with word frequency data or other corpora for frequency weighting of random words or word list elements, or being able to say, give me the 500 most frequently used words in English or Spanish, and trying to figure out what subset of those queries make sense to build in to word list. If we should just have, sorted by frequency be some sort of method you can request, or have that be part of word frequency data, or if we should curate a list of the 1,000 most frequently used words, at least according to our corpora, or some other corpus.
Okay, so let's give a few comments here. So first of all, in WordList, we're already having various options for what the word list can be, right? Are those already installed? The ones for the kind of safe for nth grade or whatever type stuff.
Yeah, Chris is finishing up a Packlet update that does some additional filtering. There are different parameters we want to look at in terms of, we don't want to necessarily get into the realm of censoring language, but we want to have, if you give a random word, we don't want profanity showing up if you demonstrate.
Yeah. Right, but what was the option name that we came up with for that?
I don't remember offhand. Let me see if I can find that real quick.
Okay, but that's the thing we have to concentrate on here, right? Because we might be in the documentation futurized. Why isn't it here?
There is a symbol called allow adult content.
Yeah. I think that's for search results, but I think that would be look, we had. That's interesting. It's not documented. I think Alan and I had worked out a whole scheme for this, because there are different levels of, the issue is whether you include, the issue also is with random word, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So random word, for example, also has this question of, does it deal with words sorted according to frequency?
Right.
And I don't think we can have this discussion very well without Alan. Can somebody maybe ping and see if Alan is available?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, but I do agree that random word, yeah, I mean, that will be useful. So random word doing something that's proportional to word usage is very similar to our sequence predict functions that try and generate things according to a language model. Am I making sense?
Yeah. Yeah, really just choosing a random word out of a dictionary is only useful to a certain degree. Having it,
well, it's a different use case. I mean, it's like, how many words do I know in English? Okay, let me take a sample of 20. That's quite useful. Mm-hmm. But I agree. There are plenty of cases where you want to. Okay, so the case of random word. Yeah, we've already got known words, and I think we have a notion of common words, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The exact definition of that isn't super well laid out, but we basically have, I think it ends up being about the 40,000 most common words in our dictionary.
Yeah, right.
And so I don't know if it makes sense to add additional filters like very common words, or if we just want to have sort of those umbrella categories. And then,
well, I would think that we could do something like random word. Why do we even not? We don't even document this. What the heck? We don't even document that case. That's the most common case, and we don't even document it. That's just totally wrong.
Yeah, it should definitely be
That's embarrassingly wrong.
should be the second use case.
It should. Can you add that, please?
Yeah, I'll do it.
That's really embarrassing. Because what I was thinking was that we could have a thing which says, pick my words only from the n most common words. Do you get what I'm saying? Okay, so look, there's several different cases we want. Okay, so one thing we want is, and I should start a separate, this is going to end up being a longer discussion here. Can somebody determine if Alan is available?
Emma is trying to reach out to him.
Okay. So, the issue is, okay, so the questions are, how uncommon are the words allowed to be? That's case one. And case two is, are the words weighted by their frequencies in the language?
Right.
There's a number of interesting suggestions on our live stream. Yeah, so the suggestion on the live stream is to weight by how common. Okay, so how uncommon are the words allowed to be, either by rank or by frequency? Now, I can imagine, if you're doing a spelling bee, you want words, might want words less common than a given thing.
Mm.
Okay, so what this is suggesting is, where am I going here? Where should I put this? Any thoughts on where this should go? Or do I have to make a custom thing here?
I don't think you have a text utility.
I have a very bad feeling that I have to call this, well, I have NLP. I'm going to put it under NLP.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. Now, let's think about an analogy here with other random, random entity, so the analogy here, so this is about random word. And let me make a stupid suggestion, but random entity, I could say, give me a random chemical element weighted by the occurrence in the Earth's crust, which is kind of stupid, right?
Yeah.
Well, random entity, e.g., cities weighted by their population. Mm-hmm. That's not completely stupid.
Right. There are a number of useful properties that one could weight by area or something like that.
Right. So that means that random entity. So if it is the case that of a given word, so how do we find out the frequency of a word in English? We say
word frequency data.
Yeah.
And Alan is here, by the way.
Okay. Alan, what did we figure out about the not just profanity filter, but the suitable for middle school type filter for WordList?
Well, what we ended up doing was just weeding a bunch of some additional profanity and other offensive words out of the default common words list for right now. We had a design for something more nuanced, and I have to find that design again. It was
what we wanted to do is to have a list of attributes that the words could have or not.
Right. They were profanity, sexual content, drug reference. I mean, there were all sorts of other sort of fine-grained subcategories of types of words that people might want to filter.
Right. But the bottom line was, our criterion was, given a classroom of elementary school kids, there was a category of words that should lead to no and tittering among kids.
Correct.
Of course, that is something that a little bit depends on, on time. But that's the goal for that.
Correct. And I think that we've done that with the latest version. So it's not just words you can't say on TV, but also dick. Things that might have a reasonable.
Yeah, but we agreed that words that have a perfectly non-innuendoized meaning would be left, right? Because there's a different case, which is, do you disallow, I don't know, gay or something, right?
Right. And
because it has a meaning that could cause trouble, but it has a perfectly reasonable meaning that is not problematic at all.
It depends on whether the problematic meaning is so much more overwhelmingly common than the non-problematic one.
I understand, yeah. But I thought we also had an idea of how to get something where you could filter out all words that have known problematic meanings, because remember, for random word, it's just like, okay, if you're picking a bunch of random words, it's okay. You can just ignore the words. Then there are enough words to go around that you could just remove any word that has any substantial problematic meaning if you want it to be a random word. So what is our mechanism for doing that?
I'm not even sure what you're asking now. The last thing we talked about was you wanted random word, which just consults common word for WordList. You wanted that list of common words to remove anything that might produce tittering in a middle school.
Wait. There are two categories of words. There are words whose meaning is predominantly titter generating, so to speak.
Sure.
And there are words where the predominant meaning is just fine, but where there is a possible meaning that is problematic, right? And we need to distinguish those cases, because we don't want to blacklist words where the overwhelming probability is that they're being used in a perfectly reasonable way.
Sure.
Right? So we didn't do that, did we? We only removed words whose predominant meaning is problematic, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a separate issue, which is to remove words whose, one of whose meanings is problematic. Am I making sense? Somebody is making background noise, by the way.
Yeah, sorry, that was me just checking something. Like the word screw is still in WordList.
Okay, fine. Right. So then the issue is words with problematic meanings. Well, so the question is the word predominantly problematic or just can be problematic, right? I think that, micro deciding whether to include, I don't know, drug-related words or something it's too difficult. I think that this is the criterion. Is it predominantly problematic, or it can be problematic, so to speak? Does that make sense?
Sorry, yes.
Now, what's the relationship to what's the relationship with allow adult content? Where are we using dollar that?
I think that was introduced for and is only being used for
search results.
Yeah.
But why is this not even showing up as a thing here?
Is that a dollar variable or is it an option in those functions?
It's an option in those functions. Okay.
We had talked at one point about whether that should be a dollar variable, but had opted just to keep it in those functions for the time being. So we didn't have more use cases that were sufficiently clear to make that a more general thing.
And we don't document it.
Is it on those? Maybe just on those pages?
Yes. I see. And we don't document. I see. We're oh boy, we are engineering this in some weird way because it isn't in the search system. Right? We excluded it from the search system. I don't know whether this is the right way to do it. Okay, well, but I think that the general idea of allow adult content as an option. So wait a minute. If we do want to get problematic words, we get that if we go to all known words. Is that correct? As opposed to common words. Okay.
That's everything in the dictionary. Yeah.
So I could imagine that we could have allow adult content arrow none. Could mean that we could have the following settings: that allow an adult content of true means just allow any word, right? Then to say false would mean disallow predominantly problematic words.
You've got I'm not sure where this notebook is in your tree, but you've got a profanity-01 notebook where you had outlined something. I think you had ended up suggesting something that was
okay, hold on.
We talked about adult content. You ended up with something like avoided categories, which
okay, hold on. Yeah, because there are other things which are, I mean, this is such a can of worms. There are other things which what was it called? Profanity. You said it was called.
Yep, it's profanity-01.
I'm not. Oh yeah, I am finding it. SW notes word lists.
Okay.
Hey, how are we doing at getting all the Swadesh lists in?
I was just having a meeting with Ben about that. We were just organizing all the remaining curation stuff that needs to be done to review those. We have a bunch of language word lists, but we had just hit pause on that months back because we didn't possibly have the time or resources to get things confidently clean for 12.
Oh my!
Some of that is back with curation. Yeah,
look at all this
right.
mess. Oh my gosh, this is a horrible mess. That's why I think we decided not to. All right, so. Well, what are we doing with this? Someone on our live stream is saying, don't remove LGBT words. Yeah. This is a horrible mess. I mean, this is kind of a microcosm of, the issues of society, so to speak, put in our maintaining a list of problematic words is labor intensive. Brian on the live stream comments. Yeah, you don't say. I mean, unfortunately, it's one of these things that's driven by bad things happening. because there are words that can. I don't know how quickly a word can become problematic. Probably fairly quickly. Probably within a month, it could become problematic. What do you think, Alan?
Potentially, I think. I mean, it's hard to say when something catches on that quickly. Definitely things that are sort of broadly thought of as okay ways to refer to particular groups can quickly become pejorative.
Right. Lies on the live stream is saying, why don't you look at the auto mod settings on Twitch? I don't know where those are, but are those for the text stream? Maybe somebody could look at those and send me a screen cap or something. I mean, I don't know what. Let's see. I mean, yeah, there certainly must come up in text chats, in I don't know what, in forums and things like this. Somebody pull them up here. Okay. Oh boy, it requires me to log in and so on. Could somebody send me a screen cap, please? Okay. So let's come back to this. Okay. So look, we've got several different things here. Here we go. Okay, this is our. Why didn't that work? I would have expected that to work. Weird. Okay.
Do you want it as an email?
No, I've got it.
Okay.
There it is. Oh my gosh, hostility. That's another can of worms. Do they have a list of what actual words they have? Anybody know? Maybe find out, please. Yeah, anyway. There's clearly not a I mean, this sadly reminds me of countries where which try to exclude certain content on websites in those countries and so on, and where in the end it turns into this weird spreadsheet of these are things we think we're disallowing and so on. Yeah. Well, this gets to be it's not unrelated to what I'm supposed to be thinking about for that Senate testimony that I am involved in. Okay. Let's see. So where are we going with this? Okay. First question is, what do we want to do? Yeah, I mean, this is a big can of worms. It's probably as problematic to it's as problematic to give these lists of words as it is to exclude them in some places. Alan, add some sensibleness to this.
I guess the thing that I'm thinking about it is the more that we look at these, we're focused on a very specific subset of words and trying to categorize them. And because they're problematic, is it problematic to have to flag a set of words as being related to sexuality if we also had groups of lists that were related to food or travel or transportation or other things. I mean, if these categories were just sort of, it's hard because we're focused on this very small subset of things, but maybe what would be more useful is
topic-based
or more topic-based things. Yes.
Could we do that from the network of words that we have in the?
I think between word data and concept data, since that's just an inversion of WordNet, and we can fill in the blanks and hook things up for all the rest of the words that we've added in. I think that's possible.
This is the same can of worms as topic modeling, and what we've discussed before about what are the target topics. Like there are those target topics we used ages ago for the Facebook study, but those are clearly not general. And we think we thought about using Library of Congress ones or using whatever. But I mean, do we think aren't we going to get ourselves in the same tangle there? I mean, one possibility is to simply say, okay, so let's take virtuous. Okay, let's take the word virtuous, which is probably in the same category as heroic. But let's take that word and let's say we say word data of that word, and we say hypernym, right? Or what do we call it? We call it broader term.
Broader terms, yeah.
Right. Okay, so this should give us
That's not useful.
That's very not useful. Great. Those word sense disambiguations are okay. Well, let's see whether is that going to give us an? See, this is broader terms isn't going to be useful because that's not giving us. That's giving us a word meaning broader term, not a super category in the sense that you would find it in a section of a thesaurus or whatever.
Fair enough.
Now, do we have that in the concept hierarchy? Maybe we do.
That's what I'm looking for right now.
Yeah, but I mean, the concept hierarchy, I don't think is going to involve, virtue. I don't think the adjectives are going to be in the concept hierarchy that we have, because that's a noun-based concept hierarchy for things like image identification.
Yeah, maybe we don't have that here.
But, look, I mean, Roget's thesaurus, for example, had supercategories. And it seems like everybody, poor Mr. Roget, Dr. Roget, I think he was. I think he was a medical doctor. An awful lot of people have used his kind of way of bucketing things into supercategories. I wonder if I don't know, we have right, isn't Barbara Kipfer's version of that thing? I wonder if she kept the same categories or not. But it's you know what I'm talking about, Alan? At the end of the thesaurus, there's a like I'm looking through one here. There's causes, fields of human activity.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, so this does have a categorization: health, legal, whatever. There is a perfectly, I think some of them are a bit funky here. Oh, great. This is funny. So there's a section called life forms. So it's got beings and things like that. And then it's got a section called general characteristics. And it's page after page of things here that include terms like choosy and boorish, which I guess Barbara Kipfer probably didn't manage to figure out. Now, I wonder whether that comes from Roget in the original or whether that was her redoing of Roget. Okay, so there are sections here that are much shorter, like natural resources is rather short. A bit odd, actually, if you ask me. Yeah, I mean, so this is... Well, okay. So clearly, okay. So if we pick here words, do we have Roget's thesaurus in the data repository? Do you know?
No, I don't think so.
We certainly could. It's way out of copyright.
The old, yeah.
We should probably get it in there. We could probably get it in there as an entity store with let's see. Oh, look at that. That's cool. I remember that this thing is I don't even know what this would look like. Let's try our virtuous word. This is a very old website, whatever it is. What happens if I do that? Who knows? So somebody had a hyperbolic tree visualization of the thing. But anyway, there's got to be raw data from somewhere where we can just get the. Let's take a look here. Oh yeah, we had a bunch of these things. Plain text, UTF-8, right? That's what we would probably want. And I see, what is this? What on earth is that word? Tergiversation? Great. Well, the language has changed a bit.
That's a great word.
It is a great word, yeah.
Equivocation, basically.
Is that what it means? Tergiversation? Yeah. I wonder whether we have that word. I wonder whether that's a dictionary word for us. By the way, is dictionary word queue doing hiss? Did I spell it right?
It's in word data.
Oh, so I just spelled it wrong. Well, wait a minute. Why isn't it in dictionary word queue?
Is Nick here?
Yeah, I'm here.
That PR is that?
Yeah, we're working. I mean, that part is just waiting on Francisco to double check and make sure there's no other concerns, but there's still the general project that I know Ben was coordinating to unify all the dictionaries, because dictionary word queue and spelling correction list use the same dictionaries that the spell checking system that the front end uses, and word data pulls from different dictionaries, and trying to get those all unified was kind of an epic project that Ben was coordinating, at least at one point, I know.
Well, is that going to get done?
My understanding was it was. I haven't been following it because I've been tied up with some other things. But
why? I still don't understand why dictionary word queue wouldn't recognize.
Well, did I
as a word if we don't? Yeah, it's spelled right. Why isn't that recognized by dictionary word queue if it's in word data? I mean, I know there's a separate problem of we've added things to the spelling dictionaries that we haven't added entries for in word data.
Did I just get this spelled wrong? Is this just spelled wrong?
Is it not a common word? Because WordList open close is common words. It's not a common word in my.
Yeah. Okay. So we're good. Yeah, it's not a common word, but it is a word.
Right.
So we're good. But dictionary word queue should be against known words, right?
So dictionary word queue is what was originally going to be called spelled correctly queue. It ties into the spelling correction system. And I think the false positive here, or the false negative here, is that the supplemental dictionary that it needs to be checking for things that we've added from WordList isn't getting loaded here, which is something I'm in the process of fixing. I just need a sign off.
But so is it the case that the words that we're adding into the spelling list, which I add them practically daily,
that's the thing that Nick is saying. We have not universally added those as new entries in word data itself.
Okay, but tergiversation. Okay, fine. But let me make the comment that, for example, I don't know whether midplane, which was a word that I just added, a few days ago, right? Is midplane a common word? I don't really think so. Right? But
it's a word.
I understand. Or Sevian, probably not a common word. But so it should be in known words, but not in common words, right? But on the other hand, there's other things that I'm adding.
This actually in midplane is in word data. So I wonder if we've been adding things to the.
Well, we may not
adding things to the spelling dictionaries because of the bug that Nick just mentioned. There are things that should have been showing up as spelled correctly.
But there are plenty of things which are modern words that are not in the dictionary, but they are fairly common modern words, which we're adding to spellings and which should get added to common words in WordList. Right?
Right. But that's the separate synchronization project. I mean, I think we were at a point where we should go in and we can do a diff of things that are
okay. But the point that I'm making, the point I'm making is that we're going to have to split the spelling words into words which should be in known words and words which should be in common words.
Sure.
Okay. Now, in terms of the word categories, I kind of agree. I think it's an interesting thing to do. I think we should try it based on, oh boy, I mean, the bags of words that we get in the topic modeler, we must have some of those from even the project that we did, how many years ago it was, on the Facebook post topics, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's come back to the original question. So the original question was, didn't we have a notion of commonest words that was supposed to be a thing that we could ask for a given piece of text? Actually, didn't we have a commonest words thing that we were planning for a long time for even for hold on here, let me look.
You want something that's a lookup basically on word frequency data? I mean, we need Francisco to comment on why that was going to require some reworking of the n-grams database.
Okay, but do you agree that was a thing that we were talking about, right?
It is a thing we have talked about.
Okay, let me see if I have notes about it.
I see something in your low-hanging notebook.
Yeah, so do I. Here we go. So this is okay. So this is what we had in mind. It seems to have been a lower priority in 2017, which is perhaps why we're now in 2019 and it still hasn't been done. But then we had the idea of common words ranked.
Perhaps the n argument can be just a range and say from this range.
I mean, this would effectively be the same thing as word count or word counts.
No. This is with respect to a corpus.
With a corpus, I see.
I mean, this is a different thing. And I agree that this doesn't seem useful.
This is just the list that's currently returned by WordList, but sorted.
Exactly. Ranked in some way.
Yep.
So the question is, then one possibility would be to have, well, I don't even know. Yeah, okay. So one possibility is WordList, which currently is alphabetical, to say common words ranked, and have that be returning the list of words in order of frequency.
Yeah.
Which will be just one computation from word frequency data. Right?
Yep. And we can always pre-compute that.
We absolutely should pre-compute that.
Right.
It's going to be a long computation.
Yeah,
so,
we just have a Packlet that.
Let's do it. I mean, that one seems useful. Common words ranked.
Do we want to include? I mean, under the hood, we can certainly include the frequencies also, which gives us the ability to do weighting in random word, but do we want an exposed version or just, I don't know, common words ranked with frequency is kind of a long.
Well, yeah, but it's a question, what does it return? Does it return, what it really should return would be an association of the type that would be used by a random choice, right? Because if what this returned, if
return basically something that looks like the output of word frequency data, with just word goes to whatever the frequency measurement is.
Well, a better way to do this then would be, okay, so then this is one thing, is common word ranked, but then what we could do is word frequency data of all could generate that association, or of automatic or something could generate that association. Right, so this case here, fundamentally what you're saying is that this thing is equivalent to word frequency data of WordList. Right, that's that makes sense?
Yeah.
Sorry, so are you saying that word frequency data all would be everything in WordList, not everything from the Ngrams database?
That's what I was thinking.
Because there's lots of other, there's a long tail of
junk, right?
Okay.
But I think it would be most natural would be to say, I don't know, that would be the common words thing.
Yeah, the second argument would get tricky if you asked for time series of all words. That'd be a pretty big data set, but the single arg case is pretty straightforward.
Yes, that would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay, but the issue is, what's the second argument of WordList? Ooh, it doesn't have one.
Yeah, we just have the different types right now.
Well, what about the possibility that WordList of n gives you the n commonest words?
It's not bad.
Yeah, and then if you give a type, it gives you the n commonest words of the specified type.
That seems reasonable. And what do we do if we say word list of 10 to the 6? I think it prints a message and then returns everything it has. Does that seem reasonable? Because in a given language, different languages, you might actually have different, a given gulp size would work differently. So for example, if you do it for, some totally obscure, language spoken by 5 people for which we only have a Swadesh list of 30 words or something, then asking for 1 million words or even 10,000 words in that language will fail. So I think we would generate a message and then just give everything we have in that case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think there are a handful of languages that we have word lists for, but we don't have frequency data for. So we'll just, in that case, handle it the same way of just saying there's an frequency data associated with it.
Right. I mean, we could, in fact, easily derive frequency data by just doing that ourselves on a small corpus.
Yeah.
Because in the languages where we don't have very many words, we'll also be able to pick up. I mean, I don't know. Can you give an example of such a language?
I think if I remember right, we have 10 languages in the Ngrams.
Yeah, that's about right.
No, I understand that, but I mean, what we could do for the other languages, it really is not a difficult project to go and you almost want to make me add it to the summer school list, in fact, to derive word frequency data for obscure languages. I think we should add that to the summer school list. Somebody could.
Yep.
Yeah, we don't have word frequency for Tamil or.
Okay. I mean, it's also a question of inflections for some of these languages, which could get really weird.
Mm.
Brian on live stream is pointing out that the online slang dictionary offers words by topic and crowdsources to determine offensiveness. It's an interesting claim. Oh wow! Look at all those things.
That's quite a list of trackers.
It really is. The So I wonder what. Oh boy. So do they have WordList? I see. Do we have any of this data? Is this data? I don't know whether this what the licensing of this is. Oh, for goodness sake. What a mess. What a mess. Okay. Against this site. Oh my gosh, what a mess. Great. Well, that's fascinating for other reasons, but what a mess. Okay, anyway. So what was the point here? The point was, the claim was that this has a crowdsourcing to determine offensiveness. Interesting. I mean, that might be an interesting basis to use, I suppose. Anybody want to comment on that, Alan, or anybody else?
I'm sorry. Say what was I was just looking something else on the site too. What was the question?
The point was that apparently they have a crowdsourced. I mean, that's another can of worms. I mean, what you know? Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, anyway, this is a horrible can of worms. We are not going to solve this. I think all we can do is we're removing from. Okay, so for random words, we probably need an option to not generate titter generating words. And I don't know how to deal with that. And I think that the most plausible way to do it so that it won't get broken is to have a $ allow adult content or something and set it to none. Because if one, I mean, for actual practical uses of this, it's got to be set in some initialization way. Yeah. Dear. Okay. We clearly, this is we have to get off this topic, but we're going to have to come back to this topic because we're not, this isn't, let's see, disallow. Okay. All right. Is there anything else we need to do right now here? I mean, this question about random word, I think we should not go in the random word weighted by frequency. Unfortunately, this scheme of the nth most common word doesn't give us. I mean, it would also be interesting if we could say WordList, you know, something like you know, something along the lines of frequency threshold.
And give a pair so that if you're interested in more rare words, you can say from 1,000 to 2,000.
Yeah, here.
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, also, if you want words whose frequency is less than 1 in 10 to the 6, for example, don't we have, in machine learning functions, don't we have that notion of, no, that's something different. We have a, this notion of, well, I think we should ask the machine learning folk. I think we already have a notion that would be suitable to use for this. I mean, there is kind of a CDF notion of a word. Yeah. Anyway, but I think this is a nice thing to try. So common words ranked and word list of n. I think we should try that to begin with.
Okay.
And then word frequency data of all or automatic, generating this giant association.
Okay. Makes sense to me.
Okay, well, so we're now onto some completely other topics, which perhaps we shouldn't try to tackle today since we're over time. Oh, well, not actually. We do have a couple more minutes. I at least have a couple more minutes here. Are we able to? Let's see. So I think I'm a bit disappointed that we have to again abandon. I mean, so okay. So the one remaining thing will be a word list by topic, right? And as Alan is suggesting, a word list by topic could have an excluded topics area. You know, we could exclude, just as we include certain topics in word list, we could exclude certain topics. But again, that's a big can of worms, because the notion of a word in a topic list, yeah, that would say if you exclude a topic, like, I don't know, profanity or something, then no, help. This is a mess.
Yeah, I mean, language quickly overlaps with speech, and trying to filter either of them are pretty complicated and tricky things. Yeah, if you want to say exclude profane words, do you want to exclude exclusively profane words or anything that has a profane tag?
Yeah, I know. That's the same as you. Well, it also doesn't help that, you know, in the imperfection of human language as opposed to computational language, a single word can have multiple meanings.
Right.
I wonder if there's any human language in which that's not the case. I suspect it's impossible, because the evolution of human language is such that a word gets kind of sort of entrained. Well, also aren't there languages like Icelandic that don't want to create new words, that reuse them? I think so. I think that's why, and I think it's in that language that the word for computer is based on something like, you know, sorceress of numbers, something like that, I believe, because they don't want to create an actual new, actual form. Now that is going to lead me to just try. I think it's something really obscure that doesn't have any kind of root. Oops. We really have Icelandic. There it is. Yeah, I thought that's what it was. Very weird word for computer. Although how exactly that packs sorceress of numbers into that single word, I don't really have any idea. Okay. A mystery. All right. Okay, let's change topics, which means so wait a second. So the one trailing issue is the topics-based word lists. And Alan, are we going to, that will be a good thing. That's another good summer school topic. That's a good summer school project, is to try and make some topic word lists.
Yeah, we can do some scouting around, look at different sources to try and build those up. But
I have to say, I'm just going to add this to my my nice organized list of projects for the year. Let's see, I think they already sent them out, so I've got to add these. Okay, so this is word lists for more obscure languages and topic word lists for specific topics. Okay, all right. So Alan, I think that's yeah, someone was asking about IthQuil here. Yes, I recently met the creator of IthQuil. Fascinating. I don't think IthQuil has the feature that, I don't know if it allows, I think you may be right that it doesn't allow ambiguity, that every word in IthQuil has a unique meaning. It's a fascinating language, which I hope to study more, even though its creator can't speak it. But that's because it's the world's most complicated constructed language. And it has a lot of exotic stuff in it. It also has exotic letter forms and things, which is just adding to the weirdness, and probably not necessary for the concept. Okay, we're going to change topics and very quickly try and go through these other things here. So, Alan, if I think we're done with the things for you. Thanks
a lot. Bye.
Bye. Okay, ragged dimensions.
So the idea here is to quickly get a report on the structure of the shape of anything. In particular, we are interested in the things that dataset is going to be eating. So this is an extension of the language of dimensions to things that are ragged. And I have here weird examples and the way the dimensions.
What the heck is this ragged thing? What is that? And what does it mean there?
Right. So it means you have a list, which is ragged. And inside, the first element is a matrix of 2, 2. The second element is a matrix of 2, 1. The third is a scalar. And so by doing this, we can report the structure of ragged things in an arbitrary way.
I'm confused by this. I'm sorry. This is what is ragged here? Is ragged a symbolic object?
Yes. So I mean, this is just a temporary suggestion for how to represent this. But yes, you went to the most complicated example. So yeah, so this simple example here will.
Okay, so these are all dense. I mean, these are all full
rectangular
things.
Yeah.
Okay, so now this is the first case where it rags out, so to speak.
Exactly. So it just reports the dimensions of the things it has inside. It's a list of 2 elements. The first one is a length 2 list. The second one is a length 1 list.
I see. So you can nest these things. So if I ragify, for example, let's imagine that I ragify here.
Yep. Exactly. So this is a full language. And there is a function called example array that goes the other way. Given a ragged dimensions representation, it gives you an example of that array.
I have to say, these seem like quintessential function repository functions. Like example array seems useful, but only. Okay, but you're saying that you think that this thing with ragged. So what about sparse array? Could it be given a ragged specification like this and generate a ragged sparse array?
Sparse arrays are always rectangular. And
well, you say that, but why?
Well, our representation of sparse arrays always assumes rectangularity. For example, you cannot feed an element of a sparse array, which is an array itself. So by construction, it will always rectangularize.
I see. But you could imagine a sparse array construct that would eat ragged specifications, right?
Yes, it could. But it's not our construction.
Okay. But the main point here is.
So the main point is that a sparse, data set, when it eats arbitrary data, it has to quickly make decisions on the shape of the representation the
I
types.
understand.
So, because now it spends time also analyzing the types of things, we want first something which very quickly only looks as a structure, at the structure, and therefore it's, yeah. So
I agree that this is useful. I'm a little concerned about this ragged head, which seems like a bit, unless it's going to be supported in a lot of places, it seems like kind of a crazy thing to have. And I wonder how we can package that without that.
I mean, possibly we can just use lists, nested lists.
Oh, it's really obscure.
But it's going to be difficult to read. But I wanted to discuss first with you the idea itself of how this works. I know this is a general language, but it's not only possible.
What's that? Well, it seems, the only issue is what is the best? Okay, so the simplest case is a single number represents the contiguous. Yeah, what does this really mean? So a single number, if I take this example up here, a single number like 2, 2.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let me just do a case here where so 2, 3 means the first 2 there means there's 2 things and there's no raggedness to the whole thing.
Yeah, the 2 means there are 2 elements whose structure is 3, and then you go deeper.
And why does this go the other way around here? I see. So wait a minute. Why isn't that in a list?
So ragged is saying I have a vector 3 and a vector 2. Ragged corresponds to a single level reporting the dimensions of the things it has inside.
Right, but so ragged of 3, 3 is equivalent to 3.
2, 3. It's 2 elements. Actually, evaluate that. Evaluate ragged of 3, 3. It's 2 elements, each one having dimensions 3.
I see.
But if you have 3, 4, then it cannot.
No, I understand. But so the point here is that what degenerates into that 2 I feel like there's something in which this is sort of there's some analogy here between something which is the pure 2 and something which is composed. I mean, what is this analogous to? Go ahead. What?
So, for example, if you put this in a list with another ragged or a number after it, you see the power of this combination. So,
what do you mean? So if I'm saying this, comma 3 or something.
Now do / some example array. It's not working for you.
Well, does it deal with that case?
Oh,
look what it did. Look what this did. Because this, in fact, reveals a bit of a problem, right? Because this, in fact, should turn into, a sequence 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, indeed. But that's a limitation of example array itself. So to change the 3, 3 to a 3, 2, for example. So the point here is that we have a ragged array whose elements are actually all of the same dimensions. And so the idea of the tensor of the product of the tensor product here is still applicable. So all the deeper elements of this array are still of dimension 4.
What's the tensor product got to do with it?
Yes, in the sense.
Oh, I see. That when you put in that 4 thing, what you're essentially doing is like tensor producting in something. It's like adding an extra index in the.
Exactly. And it's a deeper index, which is the interesting thing.
I understand. So I have to ask the kind of general relativistic like question here, which is, Is there an analog of this ragged thing in standard tensor index manipulation?
I don't think so, because in the standard language, you always assume rectangularity. You may have different dimensions. You may have indices belonging to different spaces, and they have different dimensions, but it's all rectangular.
Right. But I mean, in the case of, okay, so what you're saying here is the ragged, let's see, I'm still slightly confused. I'm still, there's something I think I'm missing here in terms of a way to think about this. You know, this is sort of like splitting.
So the main problem is that most of the data for data set is typically ragged.
Oh, I understand that. I understand that. I mean, I understand you want this functionality, and there's no problem. I mean, the question is, can there be a built-in function that is nicely user accessible?
Right. So there are questions sometimes of how do I get data set to typeset in this way? And the only way to do it is to provide yourself these type of information. Right now with the data, with the type system, type. But I think this is simpler.
So the point that you're making is that this specification would be something you could actually feed to dataset, this ragged 3, 3, 4, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. If you're interested in it getting it some shape. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know how generally, have we thought about how generally in the system this stuff would have to be supported? Like, it's a shame that sparse array couldn't take one of these.
Well, because in sparse array, you always have the default element. There's not much problem in just rectangularizing. It's actually simpler to do it.
What happens in sparse array if the default element is nothing?
Nothing. Probably it stays there. Now,
Let's
when
try
you
it.
normalize it, it would.
I see. If you do normal, then it would disappear. So if I say sparse array, 1 arrow A, 5 arrow B, and then the default element is nothing.
I think you have to specify dimensions first. Do 6, 6 or 5, 5.
I just say 6. Okay. A weird color there, which makes me very suspicious. Oh, cool. The nothing goes away then. So, but if I then were to say in the sparse array, Okay. So in principle, I mean, just for the sake of understanding what's going on, we could allow the ragged specification to go into that second element of sparse array, padding with nothings.
But for example, if you change B to list B, I think it will complain.
Yeah, I think it will. But not if it was padded with nothings. Oh, no, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. You can't have a different depth of lists.
Right.
So what is it you want to do here? So
I just wanted to present this idea to see first your reaction and whether you had some suggestion of how to modify or the name ragged. Yes, I'm happy with ragged, but for me, it's to develop this is easier to see it rather than lists.
Oh, I agree. I think lists are a mess. I also just don't know about all the other places this should appear, and I suspect there are a bunch.
Well, there is no obligation for other functions to support this, but if we have it there and it's very fast in analyzing large expressions, then this can become useful.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in geoposition, I have a similar problem because polygons also contain ragged lists of positions. And that was an example that is there at the end. So that polygon, it's describing both the ragged structure of the lists, and then at the end there is a 2, meaning they are all pairs.
Yeah, I understand. That's nice. Why do you put the sublists inside the ragged?
Well, that's how this. You mean what? You mean it could be numbers?
Yeah, I mean it could canonicalize to just a sequence of numbers, not a sublist here.
I see. So I do that because if it happens that you have a list of matrices of different dimensions, then keeping the individual lists is useful because you have.
I see. If one of them is a matrix and one of them is just a single one-dimensional list.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. What would you call this then? I mean, in a sense, it's not this that is ragged, it is the things below it that are, well, gosh.
Yeah, this represents a list containing objects of these dimensions. It could be a ragged list, but it's not a list in itself.
It's not a list. I mean, honestly, things like cyclic that we happen to have as specifications, as symbolic specifications, are fairly similar to this ragged concept here.
Cyclic, do you mean cycles?
Cycles, yes.
But cycles is a representation of the full object, not so much about its structure.
I see. I mean, in a sense, this thing is ragged dimensions, except you're using ragged dimensions as the thing to generate this.
Right. Yeah, I was imitating dimensions itself.
Right. I'm not sure. But I think I agree that the idea of this is perfectly reasonable.
Yeah,
is
so
it
to have a very fast C function that can do this for large objects?
I think the answer to this is probably yes. Data histogram list, by the way.
Yeah, I was trying to see what to do with groupings. The previous example is probably more interesting.
Right. All right. Well, this is probably a big mess, right? I mean, if you do this, you generate that, and then you say ragged dimensions of that. It's a giant structure, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. In cases like this, in which it's going to be similarly large. Yeah, but then, yes, if we group them or we sort them, like in the previous case, then it's much smaller. Yeah, so this is like dimensions. It's looking for repeated structure. If there is virtually nothing repeated, then there is no gain.
I mean, it's not obvious to me that ragged dimensions is quite right, because you're asking for, I mean, you're trying to match up which things are sort of are places where there is corresponding structure in different leaves.
Yep.
And this ragged case is the case where the leaves don't conform.
Right.
I mean, it's a list of lengths. No, a list of dimensions.
Exactly. So
go ahead.
Sorry. So we would have an extension of the dim spec. So dim_spec is now a list of numbers. Now it will be list of numbers or ragged objects.
Yeah, but aren't there tons of functions that use dim specs?
Yes, I'm not suggesting that we generalize all dims to ragged cases. I'm just saying that we have a separate function that can report the ragged structure, and then some functions can use that, like dataset.
I understand, but what's the inventory of functions that could conceivably use it?
Well, for the moment, the two I'm working with are the geoposition heads and geovectors, etc., and dataset. I'm not interested at the moment in any other one.
But what else has a dim spec?
Well, I mean, I don't know. For example, we could have all the random functions taking dim specs.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, yes.
So we could generate ragged arrays of things.
In fact, that's your example array. Would just be.
Yep. It's right. Random integer generalized.
So in particular, the way that would look is random integer, 10 or something. And that would essentially fragment. This would make for a deeper. There's no point in it being ragged if there's only if it isn't going to go deeper, there's no reason for it to be ragged, so to speak.
I mean, you can have the last dimension being ragged, but
well, okay. So what does this mean? So this means that. Go ahead.
Yes, you have 4 lists of pairs, each one containing a list of length 5 and a list of length 6.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have depth 3.
Depth 3.
Yeah. You can test that with example array.
Mm-hmm.
So ragged is adding a level of list.
Right. So again, to understand what this is like, ragged, when it degenerates, becomes just its length.
Yeah. And whatever it has inside, repeated.
Let me remind myself what that does. So you're saying when that's 6, 6, it becomes 2, 6.
Exactly. And if it was 6, 7, 6, 7, it would become 2, 6, 7.
What are you saying?
Yeah, try 6, 7, 6, 7. No, two matrices. It would be a ragged list.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That would become 2, 6, 7, 6, 7.
Yeah, it's a list of 2 elements. Each of one is a matrix 6, 7.
Why did my kernel just quit? I was doing nothing here. What is happening? That's really weird.
It's strange.
I might be running a prototype build.
But I'm not saying we should propagate this to many places. It's more the other way. Having this function being used by some functions that currently would benefit.
I understand, but in the future, we would end up propagating it, I suspect.
It might be useful. So sometimes you do want to generate arrays.
Right, so I'm still just trying to understand its name because I'm trying to understand what this really means.
Mm-hmm.
That this is a dimension specification. What's really weird, but there's an analogy, and I'm just not remembering what it is. That there are cases where you either give a list of indices or you give the length of the list. Where do we have examples of that? We've had other cases where you can do that.
I'm not sure. For example, in array Q, the second argument is a length of the list of indices, not the dimensions.
Okay. So that's a depth, effectively.
That's a depth, exactly.
Look, I don't object to this structure. I think the name ragged is weird.
Yeah.
I'm still thinking here. What is this? This is like it's like a dimensions list or something. Because this is a list of subdimensions of things contained here.
Yep.
I'm not thrilled with that name, but does that make any sense to you?
Yes. It's a list of dimensions, specs. It's potentially nested because it itself is a dimensions.
No, I understand that, but I mean, by saying dimensions list, we're giving the idea that these are themselves dimensions.
Yeah.
Although dimensions list could be something that returns something, but I think it could also be, of course, the thing that we are. That's horrible. We don't use that anywhere. We don't use that kind of thing anywhere.
We could call it object.
What's that?
We could call it object, dimensions object, but it has little structure. Objects.
Yeah, it doesn't really have a lot of structure.
Mm-hmm.
I think dimensions list is my current favorite, though I'm not totally thrilled with it. Sandra is suggesting ragged specification or raggedness. I don't think it's ragged. You see, I think it's not a specification of raggedness. It's a specification of dimensions that happen to be ragged.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. And Genesis on our live stream is pointing out that dimensions list suggests it gives the list of dimensions, huh? I agree with that problem, hence dimension object. Dimensions object. Well, what other non-generator forms? I think it's very weird if we said something like dimensions array, because that's horrifying. That's too much of a confusion with array dimensions. I mean,
And it tends
by the way, Ali on our live stream mentions there was a ragged partitions being discussed for a while. This is a different form. Oh, no, it isn't.
Yes, so that's what ended up being take list.
Okay, take list. Okay, hold on. So your point is that take list, if I say take list of, some alphabet, and then I say 432. What has happened to my kernel here? Well, anyway, there we go. Okay. So that is an example of an implicitly ragged specification in take list.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
So in principle, that will be equivalent to ragged of list 4, list 3, list 2.
Yes. That would be the dimensions of that object. I was just pointing out that the function that we were calling ragged partition is finally called take list.
I understand, but that also reveals for us, look, there's a very close connection between ragged dimensions and take list.
Yes, I do agree. Yeah.
And we should, I'm not keeping this notebook, so Whoever's what? Oh. Yeah. So whatever decorator there is for this thing. All right. In modern times, there's another possible decorator that we could use. Maybe it's crazy. Instead of ragged, we could have something that is some symbol, arrow, let's say 432 here. I'm not sure this is a good idea. I mean, I don't see any particular. Yeah, there's nothing particularly useful about that.
Well, if we generalize this to report the head as well, a bit what we do in groupings actually.
Oh, that's interesting. So what about associations? I mean, why couldn't ragged dimensions also report on keys in an association?
Mm-hmm. It could.
But then instead of a 4 here, that will be a list of keys.
Right.
Actually, I would like to comment that isn't there an identity between, one thing is a list of indices. So there's an element that has, indices 1, 2, 3, 4. That is equivalent to just a straight 4 specification.
Yep.
Right? So that's the list of indices form, as opposed to the subtree form, which is what ragged is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there are different things here. There's list of indices. There's list of subdimensions. By the way, that's another phrase, subdimensions. Not sure I like it very much, but I'm not sure I like that. But that's so. I mean, the possible things are list of indices, list of explicit of indices or keys. Then there's list of subdimensions, and then there's just size of this dimension. Correct? And that will be things like 4. That would be things like 1, 2, 3. And subdimensions here would be, in this case, I believe it would simply be 1. Well, it's not even dimension 1. It would be a null list, right? This is that case. Sorry, if I turn that into a 3,
yep.
Those 3 are equivalent.
Yep.
So those first 2 are a little awkward. Well, I mean, no, I see. You're saying that this list of subdimensions thing could be ragged of the sublists.
Exactly, and that should work already. It should convert into 3.
Well, actually, it converts to 3 with a brace, which is a little weird.
Well, yes, because it's a... Yes, this is the issue we were having before of needing a flattening or a one level less of list. But this ragged of empty lists represents a list of 3 scalars.
Correct.
So the dimensions of a list of 3 scalars is list 3.
Oh, you're right.
Because ragged is a dimensions spec, not a length spec.
Fair enough. But okay, but all 3 of these levels need to be supported, right? So we need, in the case of keys here, we would need to be able to say...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do agree with that.
Sandra is asking, could you use the specification in take to get a ragged array out? See, that's exactly the kind of issue that I was thinking about here of, in other words, that's like the cookie cutter cutting out a piece of the array, but it's ragged.
That's an interesting idea. I think
I don't see why that shouldn't work if we have a specification like this.
Well, the problem is that takes specs at different levels and not a single spec considering several levels at the same time.
I understand, but at each level, oh, I see. You couldn't give a ragged. Okay, so that's more complicated. So there's an issue there. There is a extract as to part as something is to take.
Right, it's the vararch nature of take. While, for example, array reshape or array dimensions, think array reshape.
Well, actually, array itself, is a quintessential thing that could take a raggedness specification.
Right, because that's
So I think one of the things we're learning here is there are, in fact, quite a lot of functions that could eat this ragged specification if we allowed them to. And for example, array right now can't work on an association, can it? It can't work on a list of keys. That would be association array, right?
Right.
But this kind of specification would allow you to do that directly inside array.
Right. Yes.
I need to run along to something else here, but okay. So this thing is a bit of a deeper issue than we thought. Yeah. I think in terms of what you have here, I mean, implementing this in however you want internally, exposing it through function repository or whatever seems just fine to me. Mm-hmm. But we should come back to this again and try to inventory what other functions it can take it, and then how to think about, what, I'm going to send you back this this notebook because I'm worried that I'm going to lose it otherwise unless I put it in a specific place.
Thanks.
Okay. So yeah, all right. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, we really need something where we can get all three of these levels of specification, right? Because this is the analog in table here. This is the analog of table across certain kinds of things, right?
Yes.
And we could imagine a ragged specification for table, could we not?
Well, table is going to have the same issue as take. It works.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. It's a Verogs thing.
Yeah. Yes, it's exactly what you said. Part is vararch, extract is not. So.
Right. Okay. Well, very interesting. Yeah, Sandra is asking whether you could have ragged as one piece. The problem is that ragged is a forward-looking creature, if I'm not mistaken. So in other words, if I have Sandra's example here, I don't think that quite works because that's asking for that is equivalent to, if I degenerated this to 5-5, for example, right?
Right.
That's asking, that is a forward-looking thing, which would really be the equivalent of 2-5 here.
Exactly. Yes. That's the problem, that a single object needs to be spliced into two or more.
Yeah, well, okay. That reveals another possibility, that we have a wrapper which essentially de-Verogifies those arguments for both table and take. In other words, a multi-level, a thing which packages up. You get what I'm saying?
I think so. I'm just a bit worried that it's such a big change.
No, I know it might be wrong. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there as a possible way to do this.
Yeah. I think it could work, but
see, the thing about it is that this is sounding like the beginnings of a sort of generalized dimensions wrapper, which could, as a particular case, support this ragged thing, but also support the individual keys and other things like that.
I see.
All right, I have to go. I noticed that on the calendar there's a function repository discussion. I don't know if we're live streaming that or not. Well, we'll find out later.